Prime Minister Modi has met with Bangladesh's chief advisor Mohd-Yunus, the Nobel laureate, at the helm of his anguished and troubled, and some would say volatile country at this point. But is this a thaw, or what is actually going on here? There's a lot to talk about. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. These images of the first meeting, such meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Mohd-Yunus have attracted a lot of attention and analysis. That handshake, how do we read it? In a statement after this meeting, the Foreign Ministry said that the Prime Minister had conveyed to Mr. Yunus that he should avoid inflammatory rhetoric that would vitiate the environment. There have been serious differences between India and Bangladesh in the last many months, including the fact that Sheikh Hasina continues to seek refuge in India, concerns over the rights of minorities, in particular the Hindu community in Bangladesh, and most recently, Mohd-Yunus's seemingly open invitation to China to grow its influence in the Indian Ocean. Modi's statement was strongly worded, but the handshake appeared a lot friendlier than what could have been imagined a few months ago. There is also the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is actually the dragon, the China factor. Mohd-Yunus' statement referring to India's northeastern states as being landlocked and openly inviting China to grow its influence in the Indian Ocean raised all sorts of eyebrows here in India. Also, even as we speak, the Prime Minister on a visit to Sri Lanka is also set to contain concerns there about rising Chinese influence. How do we read what's happening between India and Bangladesh, even as Sheikh Hasina continues to be in India? Let me introduce our very distinguished panel of experts. Joining me is Ambassador Veena Sikri, who's of course one of the foremost experts on Bangladesh, apart from being one of our senior most diplomats. Always a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. Joining me on the program today is Minister Press at the Bangladesh High Commission here in India, Faisal Mahmood. Welcome to the program, Mr. Mahmood. You have a challenging task on your hands, and we thank you for agreeing to be part of this conversation. And also joining me is veteran diplomat Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Before we get the conversation going, how did the Foreign Ministry, how did our MEA describe what happened between Prime Minister Modi and Mohd-Yunus? Take a look.
Prime Minister also urged in this regard that any rhetoric that vitiates the environment is best avoided. On the border, strict enforcement of the law and the prevention of illegal border crossings, especially at night, is necessary for maintaining border security and stability. There are a number of bilateral mechanisms between the two countries, and these mechanisms could meet as appropriate to review and take forward our ties. Prime Minister also underlined India's concerns related to the safety and security of minorities in Bangladesh, including Hindus, and expressed his expectation that the government of Bangladesh would ensure their security, including by thoroughly investigating all cases of atrocities.
Right. So that is a very carefully sort of scripted and prepared statement from Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri there. I will be playing out clips of Mohd-Yunus later in the program as well. Ambassador Sikri, your first reaction. Were you surprised at the fact that the meeting, the handshake took place at all? Yes, of course, India has been engaging with Bangladesh, but given that one of your comments on this program has always been that Mr. Yunus does not represent the popular will of the people, that elections are still to be held, and that Sheikh Hasina was, in your opinion, not necessarily dislodged in any way that is democratic. Should India have been holding this bilateral? Were you surprised by it?
And by what I've said here.
Yeah.
And I think that was very relevant. It continues to be relevant. I think the first most important part about the call by Professor Mohd-Yunus on our Prime Minister at Bangkok, I think it's a respect for Bangladesh. I think this is very important, that India respects Bangladesh. The relationship between India and Bangladesh is very important. It's a people-to-people relationship. It transcends any government of the day. And I think at this particular point, that becomes important because Bangladesh has just assumed the chair of BIMSTEC. and Bangladesh will hold the chair of BIMSTEC for the next 2 years, and it's a respect to Bangladesh as the chair of BIMSTEC. That's very important. Second point is that even on the 8th of August, which is the day that Professor Mohd-Yunus took oath as chief advisor on the constitution of Bangladesh, he at that time, our prime minister had sent a message of felicitations, and there were statements from our foreign office which said that we are prepared to deal with the government of Bangladesh. And we have, even at that time, even in that first statement, Prime Minister Modi had expressed his concern about the attacks on the minorities of Bangladesh, the Hindus, the Christians, the Buddhists, the Sufis, the Ahmadiyas, the absolutely cruel, the rapings, the lynchings, the killings, destruction of property, destruction of businesses, forced resignations from jobs, and that is continuing. It's not that it has gone away at all, although there has been complete denial on this from the government of Bangladesh, and saying it doesn't exist. In fact, I know so many people have come and said it's the Indian media's creation, and sort of putting the entire onus on the Indian media that we've created this entire myth about attacks on minorities. We know that those attacks are real. We know that those attacks are real. The world knows the attacks are real. And it's not that, the entire Bangladesh diaspora, the entire Indian diaspora, the entire people of India, the people of West Bengal, the people of the northeastern states, everybody knows what's going on. And only Professor Mohd-Yunus and his people are saying they don't know what's going on. So that is a very important point. I think the meeting was a good development. It's absolutely good to meet the leadership which is there in another country. But I think it is also very interesting that, there was a kind of a fake notion put out when Professor Mohd-Yunus was going to China, that he asked India that he wanted to come here first, but India said no. I think this was entirely incorrect, and it was not true. And it is very surprising that in all these 7-8 months, not a single senior leader of the Bangladesh administration has expressed an interest in coming to India. Tawhid Hussain has been to China, Mohd-Yunus has been to China, they've been to various other meetings, they've been meetings with the External Affairs Minister, always outside India, always in third locations, and none in India. This is in fact, this is an indication of the lack of interest that this Mohd-Yunus-led regime has been showing in developing the relations with India. They talk about saying, yes, we want the best of relations, but the statements are entirely different. The statements give a different view. And this has caused a lot of hurt and embarrassment and discontent in India. I think what you said about the Northeast, the statement that Mohd-Yunus made in China on the Northeast, is one example of this. It is absolutely egregious to say that Bangladesh, number one, controls access of Northeast to the ocean, and number two, invites China to extend the economy of China into Northeast India. Absolutely. Any sort of, as though the Northeast belongs to Bangladesh. So I think that has caused a lot of anger and a lot of strong statements by the political leaders of India from all political parties, by the Chief Minister of Assam and many others, explaining that this is absolutely unacceptable to say a thing like that. And then we hear after that, just yesterday, that one of the projects that have been agreed upon between China and Bangladesh, at Bangladesh's request, is to ask China to modernize a military air force base of the Bangladesh Air Force in Lal Munir Hat, which is very close to Siliguri corridor, and that this will be funded by China, but Pakistan will be the subcontractor and build it. Now, this is a direct security concern for India. So there is absolutely no doubt that the actions of the Mohd-Yunus regime are quite different from what they say in meetings like this. And this is what is a matter of concern. For example, one of the points which Mohd-Yunus made yesterday, just my last point, yesterday when he spoke at the BIMSTEC summit, he said that we are carrying out mandated reforms. Now, mandated by... This was a regime which came in a coup, in a coup led. I can detail the whole chain of command in the coup, but I don't know. I will happily do it if you want me to. But it was a coup, a forced governmental change, which brought in a regime that has no legitimacy, which is backed by the Islamist parties like the Jamaat-e-Islami.
I just have a question for you before I open this up. If it has no legitimacy, why is Prime Minister Modi meeting with Mohd-Yunus?
because when the request has come from Modi-Yunus very clearly, many times, not once but many times, and I think it was a pure courtesy. And I mentioned at the important point about the chairmanship of BIMSTEC, and we have always said that we are ready to deal with whoever is in holding the government, because on a day-to-day basis there are a lot of actions that India needs to do, needs to look after with the whoever is in power in Dhaka. And we know, for example, that this occasion was there, which for our Prime Minister to say very clearly India's point of view on very critical issues. Let us say the killings at the border. This is something that the Modi-Yunus regime has been talking about from day one. Killings at the border, as though the BSF is only waiting there to kill people coming across the border. But our Prime Minister made it very clear and very correctly, as in the readout of the statement has come, that this is a security situation. We want a secure and stable border. If somebody is going to come at night and is going to be allowed to come by the border guards of Bangladesh, they are the ones who are guarding their side of the border, and they have allowed some people to come across, and then those people come and attack the BSF at night with weapons, and the BSF has no option but to react. And this has been said to Bangladesh many, many times. This was an issue even when I was there. And I used to always say, in fact, we had worked out a very good arrangement where whenever any such incident happens, the two border guarding forces should meet, should say exactly what has happened, put out a press release on what has happened. There should be an inquiry, and the truth should come out. And there was, in follow-up of that, there was a proper coordinated border patrolling agreement, this is the disturbing part, that none of the earlier agreements show any indication of being followed. Even what Mohammed Yunus said about the Northeast, there is an agreement with the government of Bangladesh about access to Chittagong and Mongla ports. There's no mention of this anymore.
So let's pick up that last point about what Mr. Yunus said about the Northeast, which in India was seen as an open invitation to China to basically offer up, for China to extend its influence in the Indian Ocean area. Let me play out the statement of Mr. Yunus, and I'll come to you, Ambassador Sinha, and also to you, Faisal Mahmood. Let's take a look.
Eastern part of India, called Seven Sisters. They are landlocked country, landlocked region of India. They have no way to reach out to the ocean. We are the only guardian of the ocean for all this region. So this opens up a huge possibility. So this could be an extension of the Chinese economy. Build things, produce things, market things, bring things to China, bring it out to the whole rest of the world. That's the production house for you. So that's the opportunity we should seize and we should implement, we should get it done. Nepal has unlimited hydropower, which is a blessing. Bhutan has unlimited hydropower. That's a blessing. We can bring it to our purpose, to our setting up our factories and so on. And from Bangladesh, you can go anywhere you want because the ocean is in our backyard. So this is the opportunity that we want to take. And not necessarily it will be something you produce and sell it to the world. You can produce in Bangladesh, sell it to China too. Because it's a market which is easier, cheaper to produce it in Bangladesh, or it's easier, cheaper to produce it in China. That will be the question you'll be raising yourself. Any kind of business is okay. It could be highly technology-oriented business. It could be relocation of an entire factory. It could be assembly line businesses, whatever. So this is a challenge we can take together to make it happen. That's the story that we want to discuss with you, how to make it happen, what are the impediments on the way, what needs to be done to clear up the path so that we can work together.
Ambassador Sinha, when you heard that, from Bangladesh, you can, produce here, sell in China, from here, you can go anywhere you want to. What was the first thought that crossed your mind? Now, clearly, there's a China factor in the entire region, but in particular with the state of affairs being what they are between India and Bangladesh. That statement, by the way, by Mr. Yunus was before Prime Minister Modi met with him. Did you see that meeting as a thaw, or did you just see it as a formality?
I think the meeting was a formality because India has been trying to ensure that relations with Bangladesh do not fall below a certain level. The fact is that, as Ambassador Sikri mentioned, Bangladesh, especially Yunus, is trying to do everything possible to ensure that relations do not improve. This statement, for example, it's a very odd statement. One of the things that one hears in Bangladesh as a criticism of India is that Bangladesh is India locked and India is trying to play big brother to Bangladesh. Now here we are, Bangladesh, trying to play big brother to what Mr. Yunus calls the Seven Sisters of India, who are supposed to be landlocked or Bangladesh locked, and Bangladesh will provide access to the ocean. This is, of course, factually incorrect. There's very good access to the northeast, except perhaps Agartala, which is a little more landlocked, Bangladesh locked than the other states. Others, the other states are very well connected to Calcutta and to other parts of India. So the fact that Yunus has made this statement, especially in China, is extremely objectionable. And I think our government has done well to point this out, and the Chief Minister of Assam also has done well. And this is exactly the kind of attitude that Bangladesh resents and accuses India of having with Bangladesh. Now, the other point that Mr. Yunus was trying to make in China was that China should come and invest in Bangladesh and then sell back to China. He should go back, and he's an economist, he should go back and look at the trade of Bangladesh. Bangladesh exports jute and some other hairs and some other items to China. China buys just about $1 billion worth of goods from Bangladesh. Bangladesh's main exports are garments, which China does not buy from Bangladesh. And that is because China is a very closed economy. And even in a friendly country like Bangladesh, China does not open up its trade to Bangladeshi garments. It's the US that buys Bangladeshi garments. And Bangladesh's exports to India are, I think, about twice the exports to China. And yet the complaints against India are perpetually there, that India has a trade deficit and India is not opening its market. China claims that it has given about 98% items are duty-free or whatever, a concessional duty to China. But that doesn't include garments, which is perhaps the only important export that Bangladesh has. So this is a very peculiar attitude that a person is, surprisingly a person like Yunus, who's supposed to be knowledgeable, who is an economist, who knows all these things. The fact that he takes this line means that he does it deliberately. He does it both to try and to play up to China and try and antagonize or at least infuriate India.
But to what end? To what end? I'll just get Mr. Mahmood to come in, but to what end?
The end is that in Bangladesh, there are still people who still believe that Bangladesh's relations with Pakistan should be improved. That is the real relationship that Bangladesh has. It is not India, and the India factor is a negative factor for Bangladesh. They see India as a hostile, as an enemy territory, and they look to China and to Pakistan for their friendships. There is a large section of population in Bangladesh that still believes in that, and the fact that Yunus is trying to promote that to secure his position, which, as Ambassador Sikri again mentioned, he actually came to power. He's essentially illegitimate, and he came to power through a violent means. And even if he claims that he's a caretaker government, the provision in the original constitution of Bangladesh was for 3 months for a caretaker government. Now he has overstayed his welcome, and perhaps even the BNP will withdraw support to him, and it's been demanding elections. But he's happily going around to Pakistan and China to get his electoral support instead of turning to the people of Bangladesh.
So, Faisal Mahmood, respond to that with the acknowledgement that you don't have an easy task on your hands. You're here in India, you're bringing the Bangladeshi perspective, but you've heard from our veteran Indian diplomats make the point that Bangladesh was supposed to have elections by now. Those elections have not taken place. Why should India then look at the Yunus-led government as a government that represents the will of the Bangladeshi people? Let's start with basics. Of course, that handshake took place between the two leaders. Mr. Yunus gave a gift to the Prime Minister. They exchanged gifts as happens at these meetings. The engagement is there. But there is a sense of disquiet in India. One, who does Mr. Yunus represent? Two, why is he quoting Pakistan and China? How do you respond, Mr. Mahmood?
First of all, let me say that Dr. Yunus represents the people of Bangladesh. I've been listening to very senior diplomats what they have been saying in the past few minutes. Let me clarify something. I mean, Dr. Yunus said those things in China, and it was a bilateral visit. And right after China, there is this scheduled BIMSTEC visit. So he said that because he mentioned about connectivity. Because, if you look at the map of Asia, you see these 5 broad regions or 6 broad regions, and South Asia is the least connected region. And we understand the dynamics because there are 2 nuclear armed neighbors which are not in a good relationship. But Dr. Yunus and Bangladesh has long been trying to, promote connectivity in this region. And even during Sheikh Hasina's time, she also talked about connectivity. And Dr. Yunus he talked about this in China because, in China, he talked with the business leaders, and in BIMSTEC, he also talked about this connectivity and regional connectivity. So here he's not saying something that will pose security threats to India. He was
But why
only
did
talking.
he, Mr. Mahmood, if I may ask you, why did he refer then to the landlocked northeast of India? If he was only talking about connectivity, why would he need to bring up India at all?
Because that's a geopolitical reality. Those states are landlocked, right? And those states are connected with the mainland India with a very narrow corridor. So Bangladesh wants to improve this economic relationship with India, and that's why
Yeah.
he mentioned about that.
Okay, can I ask you one more question before Ambassador Sikriya saw her hand go up? You did not address the question of elections. You heard both our diplomats saying that, by now elections were supposed to take place in Bangladesh, right? Bangladesh under under the Dr. Yunus government keeps making also the demand for the extradition of Sheikh Hasina. Again, I don't know if that's a sort of formality or they really believe it would ever happen. India has not moved on that. India's argument, as you just heard, is where is the elected government? Where is the elected government? So do you have any time frame for when these elections might happen?
You have to understand that this government came to power on August 7th after ousting of a very unpopular and autocratic government of Sheikh Hasina. And now it's a transitional government. It is not a democratic government. I didn't claim that. But this
Okay.
government has the mandate of a popular uprising, a revolutionary scale uprising. And Dr. Yunus has given time. He says that the election will take place within December to June. So he has given a time frame. And I think all the political parties are talking, and now there's a consensus commission which is talking with all these political parties, and they're discussing about possible reforms before the election is going to take place. So I think Bangladeshi people now, if you look at the Bangladeshi social media space or even the mainstream media space, or if you send your ground reporters to talk with the people of Bangladesh, you'll find out that people are happy. People are happily accepting what is about the current situation. They don't want election very soon. They say that we will wait for reforms and we will stick to the deadline of January to December to next June. They're happy about it.
Okay, let's get responses to that. I'll take you up on your offer of a ground trip to Bangladesh for our own sense of what's happening there. But Ambassador Sikri, you heard what Mr. Mahmood said. Let's bring you in also with one question of my own, the Sheikh Hasina question. It's almost like Indians have forgotten. Miss Hasina is here. She's going about her life, but she also has made political speeches from Indian soil. They've been online, but they've been political speeches. That is obviously causing some sort of consternation in Dhaka. How should we handle the Hasina question? Or do we wait to see what happens till elections take place in Bangladesh?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that when you're talking about what Mr. Mahmood said about the Northeast, first of all, it is not landlocked. He himself recognized that. But secondly, much more than that, what I find quite amazing is that the present Modi-Yunus regime is not a government. It's not even an administration, because there's complete anarchy in Bangladesh. I think I'm surprised to see Mr. Mahmood saying that people are very happy and they're accepting elections and they're expecting reforms. There is nothing of the kind. Everybody is using only one word to describe the situation in Bangladesh, which is anarchy. The economy is in a total free fall. Factories are closed. People are unemployed. Inflation is sky high. Exports are falling. Growth will fall from an 15-year average of 6 to 7% a year to maybe 2%. So it's shocking. And of course, the people of Bangladesh are very unhappy. That's number one. Number two, I think when we spoke about what Mr. Modi-Yunus said in the Northeast, about the Northeast, there have been agreements between the government of Bangladesh and India on access for the northeastern states through Chittagong port, through Tripura, which is a bridge across the river Feni, which has already been built, and from where Chittagong is just 75 odd kilometers, and then through Mongla port, which is a day sailing from Kolkata, and from there you get onto the Riverine Expressway, or whatever, the Riverine route, which comes out in Zakiganj in the northeast. So these exist. There is no mention about the previous agreements. The Modi-Yunus regime is pretending that there was no previous agreement with the government of India. Now, this is absolutely galling. How can you continue a relationship when this agreement is pretending it doesn't exist, number one. Number two, there is a very strong equal access for the northeastern states to the sea through Myanmar. We're talking about the trilateral highway between, which is India, Myanmar, Thailand through Manipur. We're talking about the Kaladan multimodal. Of course, the completion has been delayed because of the situation in Myanmar, but it will happen. It will surely happen. So I think that this whole statement to go on all the time saying that, this landlocked, etc., I don't think carries any thing at all. Rather, we should talk about fulfilling existing arrangements. And
May I interject just briefly, though, because the Hasina question is still open, but I think Mr. Mahmood
Yes,
wanted
yes,
to respond to you briefly. Yes,
yes.
Mr. Mahmood, please.
Ma'am, we acknowledge that there are. I mean, during Hasina's time, we have made a lot of pacts with India, right? And there's this transit and transshipment through Bangladesh. But the current Yunus government is reviewing those because the people of Bangladesh felt that those pacts were made not in equal terms.
Okay.
Well, it is
Okay.
very easy. It is very easy to classify, so-called define everything as being unequal, and then you go to China and accept the most unequal treatment of all. So I think this kind of dichotomy in what Bangladesh talks about India and talks about the rest of the world is totally unacceptable, because you're treating India as somebody who's been acting against the interests of Bangladesh. I want to say one thing very clearly, that despite what is happening in Bangladesh today, and the sooner we recognize it, the better. The forces that lost in the 1971 liberation war, they have now taken think they have the lead in Bangladesh. You have Pakistan, you have the Razakars, you have the Jamaat-e-Islami. And these three groups think that they now hold positions of power. They are calling themselves an interim regime, but they're not constitutional, because they have allowed Islamist parties to get into that constitutional regime. And there's the Islami Andolan Bangladesh, there's the Hifaz Islam, there is Hizb ut-Tahrir. All these are there. Now, okay, let me come to Sheikh Hasina, because I don't want to take too much. I think I want to say
One second, Mr. Mahmood. 1 second. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
I want to say on Sheikh Hasina that the whole process of extradition is very long, very complex, of entirely legal process, and we should know it because we have this problem with many other countries, and we know exactly how the process works. And the completion of the judicial process in Bangladesh is a prerequisite for anything to happen on extradition. There's a whole legal process which has to be completed. You have to try the person, you have to have evidence, you have to have a judgment. And even the UN report, the Volker Turk report on Bangladesh, said very clearly that we have not been given enough evidence to prove any individual guilt. So that completely puts paid to any. So that's one thing. And when the process comes to that, and you get a legally valid extradition request, I'm sure our government will look at it legally at that time, because you have to have a legal process in India as well. So to just think a note verbal is enough, it's not. And our government is doing the right thing by saying we're not going to comment on it at all at this stage. That is an absolutely correct response by our government, and that's how it will work.
Okay, before Mr. Mahmood comes in again, I just want to bring in Ambassador Sinha. There's a very interesting comment, to go back to China for a moment, from one of our audience members. Saurabh Vishya says, actions speak louder than words. The sale of Chinese weapons and submarines to Bangladesh, Chinese investment in dual-use infrastructure indicates that Bangladesh is now ranging itself against India. When I add this to Ambassador Sikri's point that, those who lost the 71 liberation war, there's a kind of reconvening of Pakistan, of sort of, Pakistani interests in Bangladesh. You join the dots then with China, and you have a pretty delicate situation for India, a situation that we certainly can't trust. Now, where do we go from here? On the one hand, Hasina's here. The Bangladeshis might well say, all right, you gave her refuge. Why are you allowing her to make political speeches? How should India handle that? Question one. Question two, after this engagement, this first engagement, what do you see happening next between India and Bangladesh?
Well, this is a very difficult relationship. I've always maintained that Bangladesh is the most complex relationship that India has in its neighborhood, and the neighborhood is really complex. And that is because Bangladesh has people who are extremely friendly to India, who want to improve relations with India. And we saw that in the last 10, 15 years when India wants transit from Bangladesh, the idea that the Northeast will have better access by transit to Bangladesh. Yes, India needs that. And India got certain agreements. In return, India made certain major concessions to Bangladesh. And our maritime boundary was resolved by international arbitration. Now, mind you, Philippines has been trying to get China to use international arbitration to solve the South China Sea dispute. China refused to do that. India accepted the arbitral award, although India was not happy with it, simply because it is Bangladesh that India was dealing with. Our exchange of enclaves, again, we went about, although we lost territory, and the largest of the enclaves, Dahakam and Angarpota, were left out of that agreement. And Bangladesh now wants the Bihar corridor to be made permanent. So here are all these concessions that made to Bangladesh, essentially because India feels that, yes, we can make certain concessions if in turn Bangladesh improves relations with India in trade as well as in terms of transit. Then our Northeast will develop as will Bangladesh develop. And we saw that in the development of Bangladesh, where Bangladesh briefly, even its per capita income crossed India's briefly during Sheikh Hasina's time. Now, all that, with Professor Yunus, who is again an economist, is trying to reverse all that by improving relations with Pakistan and China, by aligning himself with the forces which were opposed to Bangladesh's liberation. And which is why the BNP also is having second thoughts about supporting this regime. But
so what do we so what do we do? We buy time. We incrementally engage. We incrementally engage and we buy time. That I guess is the calibrated Indian response. I do have to close before I give Ambassador Sikri a quick closing word. Mr. Faisal Mahmood, you wanted to come in. Go ahead, sir.
I mean, I strongly object the word that this government doesn't have any mandate. I mean, I have to reiterate that this government came after an uprising and it doesn't side with any Islamist party or radical elements, because this government is probably the most secular in Bangladesh's history. If you look at the cabinet and if you look at the person who is hemming this government, Dr. Yunus, he is the most secular person. And if you look at the statistics, I mean, I have to say something about this minority and Hindu attacks, because, in the past 3 months, I have been accumulating data, and I have, let me give you some numbers in a quick manner. I mean, in the past 3 months, there are cases of like 70 Hindu people. Sorry, I made a mistake. I mean, in the past 3 months, Indian media has published. I monitored around 19 media, out of which is 9 newspapers, 6 online, and 4 broadcast media. They have published 70 news items where they say that minorities were attacked, and out of those, around 40% were opinion pieces. In the months from October to September to December, there are more than 368 instances of newses in Indian media. So it proves that the Indian media are decrease. I mean, give this.
I mean, the media might be. It proves that the media is focused on this story, but you're not able to deny that these attacks have taken place. These attacks are documented. The government of India has raised them at the highest level. The Prime Minister raised them in his conversation with Dr. Yunus.
Yes, and Bangladesh and the Bangladesh government is taking due process, and more than 70 people were arrested, and 88 cases were filed. I mean that the Bangladesh government is not sitting idle. They're not giving space to the radical elements. They're taking.
Okay, so your argument is that the media is blowing it out of proportion. That's your argument.
No, that my argument is like it's reducing. The attacks are not happening at the scale that Indian media are claiming.
All right. I'm glad you concede that the attacks did take place. You're saying action has been taken. The attacks have reduced or are reducing. Ambassador Sikri, closing last word. Obviously, Mr. Mahmood's job is to represent the Bangladesh government. I don't want to put him on the mat further, but do you agree with Ambassador Sinha that at this point, India will merely buy time while flagging concerns? And I do also want to join the dots with Prime Minister Modi's visit to Sri Lanka, where once again, China's sort of expansionist eye has been roving, for lack of a better phrase. Your last comments.
Well, first of all, yes, I think I agree broadly with what Ambassador Sinha has said. But basically, what I want to say is that we are going to continue to maintain, as was said yesterday by Prime Minister Modi when he met Mr. Yunus, that we attach highest importance to the relationship with Bangladesh. It is a people-to-people relationship. So we're never going to give up on the people of Bangladesh. That said a lot that we do not recognize. This government is not a mandated government. It is a government which has far outlived its time, and it has no business to be there. To say that it's a popular government belies the situation on the ground, where people are demonstrating against the government. There are demonstrations in Bangladesh against the government, against what is happening. So I think that we are going to be very particular on, we're watching carefully all the anti-Indian statements that have been coming out from the government itself. And we hope that it is correct, but we want at the very earliest free, fair, and inclusive elections in Bangladesh. That was the first point that our Prime Minister made yesterday, and which was in the readout, that we want a democratic, a stable, a peaceful, prosperous, and inclusive Bangladesh. And none of these 5 factors exist at this moment. Okay. And we want that to happen. That is number one. Number two, I'm saying that Bangladesh continues to remain an important part of India's neighborhood first foreign policy. You spoke about Sri Lanka. This is another very important element of India's neighborhood first foreign policy. And I think the way in which Prime Minister's visit has gone to Sri Lanka is remarkable. President Anurag Dissanayake, who came to power with a political history of being staunchly anti-Indian, and actually all his previous campaigning was against India. But when he comes to power, his first official visit, state visit, is to India. And he goes to China only after India. And now our Prime Minister's visit to Sri Lanka is the first ever state visit accepted by President Anwar Dissanayake during his term. This is the kind of respect that neighbors should be giving to each other. And not like what Bangladesh, Mohd-Yunus is doing, is hurling all kinds of, wrong allegations at India. And I think
Okay.
that the way in which President Anwar Dissanayake has given the highest civilian award to our Prime Minister, they have signed a defense pact. This is a sign of a confident neighborhood, a confident bilateral relationship in mutual benefit.
I will have to leave it there. I know, Mr. Mahmood, do forgive me, you have something to say, but we'll leave it there. I think it's safe to say that the bottom line is that there is going to be a waiting game in the India-Bangladesh equation. You have yourself said, Mr. Mahmood, that elections will be held. There is a time frame for them, and what government those elections throw up could lead to a completely different conversation a few months down the line. So there can be no big conclusions drawn at this point on the fate of India-Bangladesh equations. Also, there's a new administration in Washington with a very different opinion on what's happening in Bangladesh. So there are all of those factors. We leave it there. Ambassador Sikri, Ambassador Sena, Faisal Mahmood, thank you so much. A pleasure as always. And to our audience, thank you. Have a great weekend and see you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.